Welcome back. In this faith group session, we're going to veer a little bit from the old narratives that we had. Instead, see how Christ is present in a different kind of Old Testament genre of literature. In this session, we'll see how Jesus is depicted in both Psalm and prophecy. And we're going to be tackling a big problem, the problem of suffering in the world. And suffering is a real problem, not just when we're going through it, but also when we're thinking about it theologically. And so we ask questions like, why is there suffering in the world? Why doesn't God do something about cancer or depression, starvation, the pandemic, or terrorists, or so on? It boils down to that age-old question, why do bad things happen to good people? It's a problem that causes problems in our relationship with God. I was talking to someone recently that was lamenting how his mother was basically anti-religion, anti-faith. She'd had a rough childhood, and she blamed God for her struggles, or at least for not preventing or rescuing her from her struggles. God really messed me up, she declared, but using more colorful language. And the son struggled with how to respond to that and how to get her to see God differently. And you can see his predicament. Is God at fault for her suffering? Why didn't he do something about it? Where is God in the midst of it all? Well, we'll tackle that, but before we do dive into the word today, let's hear from someone who has experienced this. Now, in the first version of this series back in 2015, Dave Franzen, a member here at Faith Lutheran, shared his own experience of suffering. And it's such a great story that I've included it again here. Give it a listen.
Hi, my name is David Franzen. I've been a member of Faith Lutheran Church since February 13th, 1947. To give you an idea, I am the grandson of Reverend Franzen from the First Lutheran Church of Litchfield. So church has been in my family since I've been around. I would kind of say I was a weekend Christian. Always went to church, but Monday through Saturday was kind of free-flowing, not always Christian-like, I guess. But in May 1st, 2001, a lot of that changed. I was an Eagle Scout, supposed to be prepared, but I was not prepared to die. Always messes me up. On my way to coffee at work, I just stopped to see how they were doing, putting a brand new boiler in our company plant, and it fell on me, a 5,000 pound boiler. I died. I died on the way to the hospital in the ambulance, and I died on the operating table at HCMC. So I wasn't prepared. I did not think my life was going to end that quick. It was a long struggle. It was not painful because I blacked out almost immediately. The most painful part was when I came out of my coma and I had to start rehab. I cried, I screamed, I did about everything I could think of to tell the nurses to put me back in the wheelchair. It was a long struggle, but surprisingly I did not blame God for this accident. I wondered, why maybe, but I didn't blame him. The biggest thing that popped into my mind was why I survived. I even cornered one of the pastors, and I don't know if it was Pastor Randy, Pastor Dave, Pastor Christine, or Pastor Paulus, but I cornered one of them, and I asked, why didn't I die? I've got relatives, I had friends dying from far less accidents, and I survived. And I have to say the answer came out of Seminary 101. It wasn't my time. It's a hard one to accept. The pastor even went one farther. He said, the Lord had something else planned for me. And then I had to laugh because the Lord had a plan for Moses to save everybody, but me, it's kind of hard to accept a little bit, but it was a long struggle. I knew that it was God who saved me because He used the doctors, He used the paramedics, He used the ambulance drivers, all of them to bring me back. And because of that, I have really become closer. I'm more conscious of everything that's happening. I hug my kids a lot. I hug my friends a lot. I hug everybody because I want to be prepared now. I have been around helping at the church. It has changed my life. I look at it totally different. I'm enjoying Bible class. I immediately joined the church council. Now, I don't say you had to run out there and do that, but just get involved because we don't know when our last moment will be.
Well, thank you, Dave Franzen, again for sharing that story. Also, if you couldn't tell, that interview was from the last series that we did before Dick Lennis took over the filming and production of the Faith Group series, and you can tell. And so thank you, Dick, for making us both look good and sound good, at least as much as you can make us look good and sound good. Speaking of suffering, right? Now, one of the great truths of Christianity, one of the things that separates Christianity from other religions, is that the Christian faith confesses that our God not only empathizes with suffering, He not only is compassionate towards those who suffer, but He also suffers with us, and even more so, for us. And this is a remarkable truth, and one that's hard to wrap our heads around. In fact, the Apostle Paul acknowledged that to some, this is foolishness. It's a stumbling block. He says this in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 20 through 25. And the question is, why is this foolish? Well, to thinkers in Paul's day, the idea that God's chosen Messiah would suffer and die like a common criminal is absurd and contrary to their expectations. Even more so, the idea that the Messiah, who is also God Himself, could experience suffering and death was not only considered foolishness, but was also contrary to the belief in an almighty and unchanging God. God can't die, they would say. Now, it's interesting. The crucifixion of Jesus and the suffering that He experienced during it is not really detailed in the gospel stories. Even though the crucifixion, together with the resurrection, is the climax of the gospel accounts, the actual act of crucifying Jesus, well, it almost comes off as a footnote. It usually states simply that they crucified Him, and that's it. Now we have some of His last words from the cross, but not much of a description of his suffering. So interestingly, the most vivid description of his crucifixion actually comes in the Old Testament. And one of Jesus' words from the cross points to the first instance. My God, why have you forsaken me? Jesus' cry of dereliction was a quotation from the first line of Psalm 22. This is the most quoted psalm in the New Testament, and much of it is used to describe what Jesus went through. All who see me mock me, it says. They sneer at me. They shake their heads. Commit your cause to the Lord. Let him deliver. Let him rescue the one in whom he delights. And you can easily read this and imagine the mockers at the foot of the cross. Verse 18 says, they divide my clothes among themselves, and for my clothing they cast lots. Again, just as they did with Jesus' clothes. I mean, it's no wonder that Jesus quoted this psalm, for he relates to it so well in his experience. He relates so well to the experience of the psalmist. And the psalmist's words are almost prophetic as they point to the sufferings of Jesus. And then there's Isaiah 53. The book of Isaiah has sometimes been referred to as the fifth gospel because of the many ways in which it describes Jesus. In the first half of Isaiah, you have the well-known prophecies of Jesus' coming. Look, the young woman is with child and shall bear a son, and you shall name him Emmanuel. Or, for unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given. Or, a shoot shall come out of the stump of Jesse, and so on. But it is in the second half of Isaiah, sometimes referred to as Second Isaiah, that we hear these remarkable words. Who has believed what we have heard? And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he grew up before him like a young plant, like a root out of a dry ground. He had no form or majesty that we should look at him, nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by others, a man of suffering and acquainted with infirmity. He was wounded for our transgressions, crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the punishment that made us whole, and by his bruises we are healed. Now, whether these words and the rest of this suffering servant song found in Isaiah 53 were written with the Messiah in mind, or refer to an anonymous figure in the history of Israel, one thing is clear. You can hardly read it without thinking of Jesus on the cross. The song of the suffering servant makes a number of things clear. First, he suffered. Listen to the verbs in this song. He was marred, despised, rejected, stricken, struck down, afflicted, wounded, crushed, oppressed, cut off, and poured out. The second thing it tells us, it was because of us. It was for us. Listen to what he says. Surely he has borne our infirmities and carried our disease. He was wounded for our transgressions, crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the punishment that made us whole, and by his bruises we are healed. The Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. And the third thing it teaches us is that this was the plan. As verse 10 explains, it was the will of the Lord to crush him with pain. Through him, the will of the Lord shall prosper. The righteous one, my servant, shall make many righteous. He shall bear their iniquities. This was God's plan for us. And finally, this suffering servant is exalted for his sufferings. The song begins, "See, my servant shall prosper. He shall be exalted and lifted up and shall be very high." And then the song ends, "Therefore I will allot to him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he poured out himself to death." Out of crucifixion comes resurrection and new life. So wherever you are, and whatever kind of suffering you have experienced or that you find yourself in, take heart. Our God has sent his servant, his Son, to enter the suffering with you. Indeed, to enter it for you. This was his purpose. And just as Jesus overcame that suffering with his glorious resurrection, so for us too, in Christ, there is hope in our suffering. And that hope does not disappoint, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. So remember Jesus' words to his disciples, "In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, for I have overcome the world." So then, so will we. Go ahead and talk about this amongst yourselves. God bless you, and we'll see you in church.